Namaste. I'm Shobha from CNS, and I welcome you all to this very special episode of Gender Equality Talks hosted by CNS. These talks feature insights and viewpoints of people who are striving to achieve gender justice by addressing the root causes of gender inequality. Today's session will focus on invisible labor at home, the unpaid care work. As we all know, tomorrow is International Labor Day, and this year's theme is social justice and decent work for all. But where is the social justice for women? Every day is an unpaid labor day for a vast majority of them. As per current estimates, over 75% of the world's total unpaid care work is done by women. And women spend 10 times more time than men on a variety of physically strenuous and emotionally exhausting unpaid household chores like cooking, cleaning, child rearing, caring for family members. Incidentally, all these words begin with a C. This gender division of labor or feminization of domestic work fuels gender inequality, which in turn fosters unpaid care work and also sets the underlying tone for violence against women and girls. Interestingly, as per an analysis by Oxfam, even at minimum wages, the monetary value of the unpaid care work done globally by women aged 15 and above is at least 10.8 trillion US dollars annually. So if all the women above 15 years of age were even given minimum wages for the hours of work they put in at home, which is not paid, they would earn that much of amount every year. Without any further ado, I now welcome our distinguished speakers for today's discussion who come from different countries. Just give me a moment and we will begin. I am honored to invite Dr. Betty Achan Ogwaro, who has so graciously consented to give the opening remarks. Betty is Member of Parliament in the National Legislative Assembly and former Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, Republic of South Sudan. She is also facilitated in the National Transformation Leadership Institute, University of Juba in South Sudan. Welcome, ma'am. We are very honored to have you with us today. And over to you.
Thank you so much. Let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everybody who are online and to you and my co-speakers, protocol observed. I'm so pleased that we are discussing today the rural woman, because the rural woman is the woman that holds the world together. We know, as you have said in your remarks, that women do most of the work, maybe 80% of the work in the house, around the house, and outside the house are done by women. However, we rarely hear women being appreciated for this work they're doing. A woman not only cares for her family, direct family, the husband, the children, but also for her parents, even if she's not living with them anymore, and her other relatives. A woman, for example, in South Sudan, is the breadwinner. South Sudan has been in war for years, over 50 years. Then they got independence in 2011, but they are still in conflict. So women are still the one holding the families together. Most men have left the rural areas, they have gone to town, and they are not employed in town. So the poor woman who is left at home has to till the land in order to support her family, as well as support even the husband who has left and has gone to the city. South Sudan is agricultural based. So farming is the day-to-day life of the women. The women do from tilling the land, planting the seeds, weeding, harvesting, storing, and even selling. But once it is a product, she no longer controls it. The husband is the one who controls the product. And if they sell, the money belongs to the man, not to her. And he would rarely say, thank you for having produced this. He will say, this is your job. Why would it be the work of the woman and not the work of the family, the man and the woman alike? Because a man only tills and leaves the woman to do the rest. We also have seen women not only surviving with the agriculture, they do extra work to supplement what would they get from the farm. Today, if you go to South Sudan, salaries are not coming, they are delayed most of the time, either for 2 to 3 months. So it is the woman who have to supplement, find a way of feeding the family until they receive the salary. This is very hard for a woman, and very hard when even nobody says thank you. When communities form, for example, farmers association, they don't call the woman for a meeting. They don't include the woman in the leadership of that association. And yet they know the person who is going to do the work is the woman. When there's a training that comes in the village, the men will say, no, the women are busy. They're taking care of the children. It is the men who go and do the training, and they don't come and relate it back to the women. So you'll find that the women are missing out on a lot of information, even if it is political information, social information, or educative information. Women miss out because they are said to be busy and taking care of the children. It is worse with the rural women. The rural women, because they are less educated than the men will always give the excuse of, oh, she's not educated, she will not understand what is going on. But if she can understand running of the house, she will understand any meeting that is taking place. So today we are celebrating, or tomorrow we'll be celebrating the Labor's Day. We really should be celebrating the women of the world, because they're the ones that are holding the world together. They are the ones that make families exist. They are the ones that supplement a little money their husbands give them. Besides, they live in very difficult situations. If you take South Sudan, where agriculture is the mainstay, but agriculture is in a rural area, and rural areas lack most of the things. There are no hospitals. A woman in labor sometimes, if the traditional birth attendant cannot manage her, she will die. There are no roads to reach them. Even if they cultivate extra food, they cannot bring it to the market because they have no road to bring the food. They cannot carry from the farm. Schools are not even there to allow the girls go to school together with the boys. But often mothers also are part and parcel of making girls not go to school, because the woman would always want the elder girl to take care of the children when she goes to the farm, or cook for the family when she has gone for water. So you'll find that education is also dragging, because the first facilities are not there. Secondly, she has to help the mother. Thirdly, the community don't see education as an important thing for a girl child. Water and sanitation is also a problem. in a rural area, women have to walk long distance to get clean water. And these water points are few. You'll find that women gather there and stand for a long time before they can come back home. And often women fight because everybody wants to go quickly and get water and go home. So they will begin pushing themselves and fighting over the water in the water point. So we need to support the rural woman who is doing so much for the family. The man is sitting there, the woman has to go and get water for him to take a shower and to wash the children. And also, we have to be reminded that this woman is not a machine. Even machines break down. So women get sick, they get weak, they get depressed because of the overburden of work that they do. In South Sudan, there was supposed to be an economic empowerment fund to support the women. This has been announced, but it's over 3 years now. It has not been materialized. So you'll find that the women do not have any support. And even women who are in town who would like to expand their agricultural activities, they cannot borrow money from the bank because they don't own land or they don't own houses. Because houses are owned by the man or the family, and they cannot use it as collateral. So it is time really we need to think differently for our women, both in the town and in the rural areas. The educated women who can manage by themselves are very few compared to the number of the women in the world. As we celebrate the Labor Day, let us celebrate the woman, because it is the woman who has made this world exist. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Betty. And we are here to celebrate each other and women like you. And indeed, we should be celebrating women everywhere. And thanks for putting the focus on rural women, because and what points you have made, I think they are very pertinent, only not in South Sudan, but many other societies, which, as we call them, patriarchal societies. And rural women, yes. And I would like to share, recently I saw a film where a seemingly illiterate woman, she says, women can grow food and they can cook food. Women can bear children and they can bring them up. And yet lies are being circulated in the world. She calls it a fraud created by the patriarchal society, that women can do nothing, whereas they can do everything. And she also says that the day they come to know about their power, it will be difficult for men to digest that. And that is why they keep on creating that fraud. So thank you, Betty. Thank you very much for energizing us and joining us in unity and unison for a better world and for a really socially just world for women. Thank you so much for being there. Yes.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Hafsah Muheed. Hafsah is an intersectional feminist and human rights advocate from Sri Lanka, who is deeply committed to advancing gender equity, human rights, and inclusivity within decision-making processes. Over to you, Hafsah.
Hi, Shobha.
Hello, your voice is breaking a little bit, Hafsah. We can see you clearly.
Now,
yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
okay, great.
Yes, much better.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think the flow was set beautifully, and I just loved hearing the insights that I was listening into. And honestly, it's a privilege to just add into this conversation. I'm just going to highlight some of the experiences that I've seen working in the grassroots as a young feminist, standing on the shoulders of the feminists who did the work. In terms of invisible labor, I think the Sri Lankan context, similar, where first and foremost we have the biggest issue from a policy perspective, where the economies have not included the economy and the sector as formal, which implies making it invisible. And the fact that this still continued when they calculate economic indicators makes it mainstream economies not calculating this labor is one of the biggest foundational things that is yet being continued despite progress in the gender space. I think that is something also to understand. Secondly, the need for feminist economies, therefore, is crucial. And while countries and communities have looked at the way, the research for ideal national level and regional level context on the need for feminist economies is yet not done in terms of research. And also programming it into the mainstream governance of a country is also waiting. So I want to touch on this. Apart from that, I think it's also important to understand, I think the radicality that I am seeing is with the word women empowerment being a buzzword, and a lot of women who are able to pursue formal employment, considering home support as a key factor in their empowerment, which I understand, but assuming it as a norm, where they are invisible labor, where they have access to resources to get support systems to that. While many other women and girls and individuals from other gender identities and marginalized communities do not have that access, yet have been contributing to the economy and through labor in different ways that supports their career, yet that labor is not considered as a form of labor or formal labor, and it's a challenge. The other thing I want to also highlight is the marginalized communities, say it is persons with disability and their access to labor. While they have to, even though they are contributing in different forms, that labor is not considered just due to their marginalized identity in terms of accessibility. So that is something very important we need to think about when looking at invisible labor coming where even not the home front, that is one angle. The other one, they are also indirectly contributing, but just because of a identity factor of marginalization considered as invisible labor as opposed to visible labor. I would like to first highlight that because especially in the Sri Lankan context, accessibility is a bigger challenge. The other thing is access to resources and discriminatory laws that promote invisible labor. Firstly, in Sri Lanka, apart from the general law, we have four other laws which I've highlighted before. So two of such laws does not provide access of land to women, especially if they come from a hierarchical like generational line A. Two, even if your own spouse is owning the land, if they are missing in action or passed away, especially coming from a 3 decade civil, there's so many people to continue and toil in invisible labor due to discrimination laws preventing their access. So just like the context in Sudan, in Sri Lanka, also the access of land to women and the resource to women is an issue. Due to this, it has led to informal microfinancing in an unhealthy level because of the invisible labor that they contribute does not allow them to access formal financial institutions, has led them to corrupt institutions just for survival, resulting in high interest rate, resulting in loss of lives and extreme pressure to unregulated financial interaction with unregulated institutions. So all of this ties up from the home front where a female tends to take with gender roles coming into play, taking up household work of invisible labor, labor done in informal economy, from the role of a street vendor, even to a female fisher in the fishing community, has this range of experiences, and then connecting to their access to resources, then thus resulting in a continuous vicious cycle of invisible labor, where the next generation also, due to the lack of resources of parents or their family, continues that, which is another big problem that we working with the community. So I think as we come to Labor Day, because while we wait for community change, for behavioral change, to support people who are currently struggling due to the um, we have to look for political changes which have legal binding support. The need for social security protection for women who are doing invisible labor. Where, for example, if they are in a situation of where they have experienced the base violence, domestic violence, but the labor they have provided for their well-being has been invisible labor. It has been very difficult to provide financial support for them to leave such toxic situations due to the contribution of invisible labor and invisible labor being normalized. So these are the contexts that we have to think of. So this May Day, as we come into all forms of labor, we acknowledge the invisible labor and national level legal policies to look at reforming and acknowledging invisible labor is needed with social safety nets provided. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hafsah, and thank you for bringing up again the problem of ownership of land or property. Because as we see in India also and elsewhere, I think, as I mentioned, all patriarchal setups, no home is her own home. From her father's home, she moves to her husband's home. And when there is no ownership, then of course, which means that she is earning by way of so many of that invisible labor. She's contributing to that, but she does not have any say over the decision making in the family. And as you have mentioned correctly, this gives rise to domestic violence. It abets domestic violence because she is at the mercy of the so-called bread provider or the breadwinner, whereas her contribution is same. And even for women who are working outside, for them it is a double shift because they don't get absolved from that invisible home care work. So it is just like doing double shift. One shift is unpaid and for one shift they are getting some money. So thanks for bringing out those points. And I now welcome Prashanthi Jayasekara, who's a consultant with UN Women Regional Office of Asia and Pacific on ending violence against women. Please share your thoughts, Prashanthi.
Hello, thank you, Shobha. Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here. Just to acknowledge that the conversation that we're having today, historically, feminists from the Global South, for sure, have been talking about the essential role of social reproduction of labor. And I think care work is paramount and essential to maintaining healthy families, societies, and contributions to economy as a productive labor force. And something that I really would like to sort of draw our attention to is the crisis situations that we are presently in the world right now, whether it is pandemics or economic crisis or climate crisis that we are in. We know that issues of food insecurity and the questions of maintaining safety and peace in families and communities, this is often a question that we're grappling with. And we know that women are often championing this cause and invisible as we speak today. So, for example, whether it is going outside to find food or water or firewood or maintaining a home garden to source food for family, or whether it is being negotiators of peace in community and safeguarding rights and safety of women and children in households, we know that women's care roles, they extend beyond its conventional boundaries as homemakers, quote unquote homemakers, and it transcends to become change makers. So I think it is very paramount and essential that we recognize this important function that women and girls often face and the gendered nature of this role. So something that I'd like to actually contribute to our conversation is that as the speakers before highlighted, that we in our drive towards advancing policy and legal frameworks to recognize care work, to make it visible and to transcend from its invisible nature. I think something that we can talk about is that how well care work is very important to recover from the crisis and conflict situations that we are facing right now, and also preventing crisis happening in the first place. So I think that there is this importance of recognition of care work as an important function in our humanitarian and development conversations and the broad implications that we have for our democracies and the peace and stability of our households. So we do know that when we think about violence against women, we know that violence in the home and also outside the home, it impedes women's work as care providers, whether it's paid or unpaid. And we know that women who face violence, they may face long-term challenges to working and performing work broadly, and also the care functions, whether it is trauma or due to unsafe living conditions. So it's something that we can actually look into as we drive this conversation of care work, about how do we recognize care work, how do we make care work safe and secure, both at home and outside, whether it is paid care work or unpaid care work. And also, as the speakers before mentioned, the unformalized, underpaid nature of the care work. And we do know that, so the lack of job recognition, and these are all these are spaces or breeding grounds for gender power inequalities. So these are also avenues that drive violence and continuation of violence. So there is a broader conversation about how do we prevent violence that is happening in care work spaces. And something to note is that recognition and providing proper safeguards, whether it is gaining access to social protection, and how do we shape response services to address this cause. So again, just to note that it is really important that we recognize that in the world that we live in, and in the context of crisis and humanitarian emergencies that we are faced with, the making care work recognized and making care work safe and secure, and also addressing the unfair gendered nature and the unfair power inequalities that is sort of imbued in the care work, is something that we need to take into our policy and programmatic conversations. So just a few thoughts for us to think about, further engage in as we talk about how to address these issues that we are grappling with pertaining to care work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prashanthi. Thank you for bringing out these points and what we call feminization of labor. Like we have compartmentalized work also into being feminine and masculine. But I feel what we actually need is a feminist world order. And for me, feminism is not about matriarchy. And I think you would agree for that. It is actually about solidarity and care. Patriarchy is about using power and violence against other people to gain more power. And feminism is using care and solidarity to change systems and share and redistribute power. And if we are able to achieve that, that'll be the day we want to see in our lives, hopefully. Thank you, Prashanthi, for being there with us today. We now move on to Nepal. I welcome gender and media researcher Samiksha Koirala. Samiksha is currently assistant professor at North-South University in Bangladesh, and she is visiting faculty at Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, Nepal. Welcome, Samiksha, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Sovaji. Namaste and very good afternoon. I hope most of us we are in the same time zone. First of all, thank you so much for picking up this topic on invisible labor at home on Labor Day. Because in my experience, I have found that we end up talking about issues around women, gender, women rights. It has to be around Women's Day or some particular day that's dedicated for women only. And the issues around labor has largely been dominated by men. First of all, I need to tell by no means my area of expertise is labor. I mainly work at the intersection of gender and also media. But I feel that we need more discussion around this topic in order to achieve gender equality goals, as rightly pointed out my former speakers. So unpaid care work and gender equality are very closely linked because of this disproportionate burden of care responsibilities that fall on women and girls as well. So by the Nepali definition, the work mostly includes a different kind of home-based activities and outside activities too. But the activities that, like cooking, serving food, cleaning utensils, some minor kind of house repairs, even shopping for household, caring for the old, sick, and children, these are not considered as work. So this is where we talk about the concept of invisible labor, which is largely around unpaid care work. And I think the concept of unpaid care work is still relatively new in Nepal, and it might be the similar case in our region in Global South. Somehow unpaid care work has been excluded from the mainstream development, economy. So in a way, it's undermining the value of unpaid care services provided, especially around household. And Nepal being a low-income country, it faces unequal distribution of invisible labor. And as I told earlier, women mostly take care of this responsibility. So because of this reason, women are also confined. Like if you are busy at home most of the time, it definitely hinders other aspect. That might be working outside home, that might be about attending school. In Nepal, the female literacy rate, recent data is the female literacy rate is at 69.4%, whereas male literacy rate is at 83.6%. So in my experience, because I was working with women ministry as well before in Nepal, so in my experience during COVID-19 pandemic, there was a lot of attention around the world, no doubt. And that was also the time people from different stakeholders started talking about this concept of individual labor, and they were paying more attention to these concepts of unpaid care work. But although the feminists in Nepal were working on this issue for more than a decade, that was the first time in my realization during COVID-19, we started talking about how important this work is. When everything came to stand still, service sector, be it paid or unpaid, it had to go on, right? And not just that, it also, I think that was the time many of the people realized, even in order to sustain this like macroeconomy, like the industry or bigger business, it's important the people at the back, people at the home, people who are at unpaid care work, they have an important role in order to get all this business or our day-to-day activities going on. To give you more context about Nepal, Nepal recognizes unpaid care work, but I mean it's a bit tricky in a way, you know. So for example, when it comes to childcare, what the civil code says is, if a woman cannot and does not want to take care of her child, it is the legal duty of father to take care of the child, meaning that it makes a male partner or a dad mandatory, but it's more of, I mean, it does not make it a mandatory, but if women is absent, so it's not just the women's job, it is also your job, but it's primarily women's job. And even this provision, I don't think, I mean, in my experience, I don't know many women who actually say that, okay, I don't want to take care of the child, so you should do the job today. I mean, it doesn't happen that often, right? And so this provision applies mostly in the case of when parents are separating in case of divorce. That's what I have seen in Nepal. And to give you some data before I wrap up, according to Nepal Labor Force Survey of 2017-2018, 71.4% of those aged between 15 years and above report doing at least some unpaid domestic chores and child and elderly care related activities. And this proportion is higher for women at 90.7%, whereas men reported at 47.2% only. Within this unpaid work category, 32% women and only 16% of women reported providing children and elderly support. So going by the data of Action Aid, that's 10 years old, If we include all the paid and unpaid work as total hours, in average, Nepalese women are working 1.4 hours for every 1 hour worked by Nepali men. So just like Sobaji was talking about, so women often get this blame of like, you are staying at home, you are doing nothing. So even that nothing is actually a lot more than a full-time job. So towards the end, so I'm sure we will discuss it further, what can be done and all. So having some background on media, I feel that media is also largely to be blamed. How we often see women cooking food in this advertisement of cooking oil, to like why always women is promoting Surf Excel or Ariel. Of course, like some kind of reversal gender roles we have seen of late in some movies and advertisements, but I think media is reinforcing gender stereotypes, and it does not give, or it does not recognize these domestic chores the way it promotes work outside home. Maybe it's in business, maybe it's in industry. And I think at the end, the only thing I want to say is having just one policy on unpaid child work is not enough, because I think it has to be incorporated into other policies, perhaps in health policy, issues around gender mainstreaming, economic development, education, among others. Thank you very much. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Samiksha. Thank you for bringing up those very important points. And also, actually, it should be equitable distribution of work. And this, I'm reminded, after hearing from you, I'm reminded that very often, in very high profile jobs where if a woman goes for the interview of such a job, she is generally asked about her marital status. Does she have children or not? If she doesn't, does she intend to have children? And then how will she manage childcare at home? And how will she manage that along with the job? But no man applicant is asked these questions, because the interviewers, they know, the company owners, they know that that is not a man's job. So we don't have to bother about what he's doing, that will be doing that at home. So as you said, those sort of wrong, harmful social norms and gender norms which are entrenched there, and the role of media, thanks for pointing that out. How media and others, we idolize motherhood, we idolize the so-called good wife image, and a woman should be meek and submissive. Those are her qualities, and men should be brash and rough. So all this goes, along with that unpaid. That also leads to more of the not recognizing that important work which goes as unpaid and unrecognized. What we call the silent work which goes on, and and invisible as well. So thank you for pointing out the role of media there. Our next speaker is Rita Widiadana, who's country director for Consortium for Press Freedom Indonesia. She's a trainer on women's empowerment and youth leadership programs. Welcome, Rita, and over to you now.
Thank you, Soba. Thank you so much for having me, and it's so honored to be with a very prestigious speaker. This is very important to mention that the role of media is very important, like the former speaker said, that also Soba. So I'm as a media, as a journalist, also I'm so glad that now in Indonesia, many media, especially women-friendly media, are starting to focus on invisible labor works, like unpaid workers, to be visible to our audience, to policymakers. So I think this is only happening in the last a few years before we recognize that unpaid care works is work. So I think this is the beginning of the Indonesian media to start focusing on this important issue for women in the global south, including in Indonesia. So this time, I think I will focus on the conditions of women in Indonesia, which is, I think, so similar with other countries in Asia and other global south. So firstly, I will portray the general condition of women in Indonesia. Indonesia has 274 million population, and half of the population, or around 130 million of Indonesian population, are women and girls. However, only 53.3% enter labor force. This is the lowest in Southeast Asian region, with average of 56.6% of women entering labor market. So Indonesia is one of the lowest, in contrast to 81% of male labor participation. That is data from International Labor Organization in the latest in 2024. So in Indonesia, why do women leave their works? According to ILO and World Bank, around 40% or 35 million of women workers leave the workforce because of marriage, childcare, and domestic responsibility, and move to unpaid care workers because they cannot afford affordable daycare, and also nobody take care of their children or their families. So even when they are still at workforce, women and girls within the households in Indonesia, wife, daughters, and daughter-in-laws, continue to do the majority of the unpaid care works activity 3 to 6 times that of men contributions. So challenge for Indonesian women, like other women in the world, Indonesian women and girls bear the brunt of the unpaid care works, creating wide gender gap, the root cause of their economic and social disempowerment. According to the data, women spend more than twice as much as men on unpaid and domestic works, with 18% of their day compared to only 8% for men. So like other Asian country, Indonesia also, in terms of social and cultural and religious context, women in Indonesia are expected to take care of families and communities. Women's places are at home, and that care is naturally a woman's task. So this is so ingrained in people's mind that women should be at home. And strong patriarchal social system have limited Indonesian women from participating in the labor force in full potential because of the systems. And the other important things is lack of care infrastructures, women-friendly working policy, and care policies that hamper women from entering job markets. Many women, both in urban and rural, as well as educated and uneducated, less educated, are afraid of continue their works because they cannot afford there's affordable daycare system and supporting family system. So they choose to leave the labor force and stay at home instead. So what Indonesia and other countries can do? So we have to addressing unpaid care works that require comprehensive policy changes and change in social, cultural, and religious mindset toward caregiving and breadwinning, pointing to the need that the government and policymakers' commitment to accelerate the pace of change. There is a need to increase the voice of unpaid carers, especially those within the households, to become visible to policymakers. The country, the government, should also investing in care infrastructures, including in early childhood daycare, elderly care, and health centers, care-related protection and social protection, care service, and also providing flexible working system for mothers and pregnant women, as well as paid paternal leave for husbands to jointly take care of children, among others. This will lead to leveraging women's full potential in social and economic development progress in the country. So I think Indonesia also has launched a roadmap to take care, to provide care service for women, but the implementations of the roadmap are still in questions. So I hope that everybody is now focusing on this particular issue to make, to create social justice and gender equality for women in Indonesia and other part of the world. Thank you, Soba.
Thank you very much,
Over
Rita.
to you.
Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you for your interjections. And we had Nurul Islam Hasib, the lone male panelist here, who's senior correspondent with Dhaka Tribune, Bangladesh. But last moment, I think he has been called for some urgent meeting, so he will not be able to be here with us today. We now open for comments and suggestions and questions from our esteemed audience. Please type in your questions and comments in the chat box, or you can raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak. So we now open the floor for discussion. Any interjections, most welcome. Yes. Come on, I'm sure we have a lot to say, all of us. So this is your chance, dear participants, to please speak up. No questions? Yes, Rita wants to hear male perspectives on this topic. Where is there so much of silence from our male participants, male audience? Yes, please. Yes, Fahima Ahmed.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, very audible.
Thank you so much. I actually, rather than a question, actually comment. So I would actually wanted to appreciate, first of all, this initiative, very timely, because today, even today, my mother was saying, like all the care work that she is doing, other than appreciation work, like what is there? So when I saw this discussion happening, I could relate to it. And I was like, yes, like we don't ask this question. And even and one of the participants talking about male perspective, and very rarely we have men or other diverse population joining this discussion. So I think this is something we should have. And also from the panelists that we are having today in this discussion, is there any implementation? I know we were talking about lack of implementation in some of the places, but is there any any initiatives or anything that has been done in this region that can be that can be very eye-opening for other region as well. So is there anything that has been done so far to address this concerns? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes. We want the male audience to wake up, please. We have put our submissions there. What do you have to say? And Pahima, yes, I did want to. That is why I wanted to have, I had called Nurul, but unfortunately at the last moment he was called for a meeting, so he could not join. Anyone else wants to say something, or is the audience too stunned on hearing what they have been hearing? I wanted to ask Betty to tell something more about ownership. Why is land ownership so important for women, especially rural women, and of course the urban women also? Ownership of property. Can we have your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
And, yes.
Well, thank you so much. Ownership of property is so important for many reasons. Number one, you can use the property to loan some money. If you fail to pay, for example, from the bank, they can take the land. So it is like a guarantee for you. Number two, if the husband dies, in my society, if you don't have a land attached to your name, if your husband dies, the family will ask you to leave. But if it is your land, then nobody can ask you to leave. At least there's security. You have security there. Otherwise, you have no security. So land ownership is very, very important. Secondly, nobody else can take it from you. You can cultivate it for years and years and leave it to your children. But if there's no ownership, anybody can come and cultivate in it, and you have no say. And in fact, in South Sudan, the rural area still don't have land titles. It is a communal land. So you can just go to a community and say, I want to cultivate here, and nobody will stop you. It's only in the town where the residential areas have titles. We still don't have agricultural land, which is demarcated with certificate that you can own. It is still a community land, and we are still working to see to it that this community land should actually have titles, because we have seen how people fight, especially women are disadvantaged. Strong men come and move women out of the places that they have been cultivating, and they will cultivate. But because a woman has no title to it, she can complain to nobody. If she goes to the court, and the court will say this is a communal land. So title is very, very important. It gives security to the women. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Betty. And, you know, in urban areas also, at least in my country, I see that generally the house is owned by the man of the family. And there have been at least I know many cases where if there have been discords in the family, the man says, well, you're free to leave the house if you want to.
Yeah.
Because the house doesn't belong to her.
Yes.
So if that house belonged to her, she could have said the same thing to the male partner, that if you are then you can leave the house. But ownership, I think that is very important, to have equal rights over property and ownership over property. Yes. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Maya Joshi says, women who till the land, even they have no land rights most often in Nepal. Samiksha, would you like to say something on that?
Yes, like Mayaji pointed out, ownership of property is a very big issue. Just like you pointed out, not just in rural area, but also in urban area. Although the constitution guarantees equal rights, and it is still being implemented, because I think till a few years back, like daughters, they didn't have any right to parental property, and they had to rely on husband's side of the property. And although it was legally guaranteed, but the whole social stigma around what happens if you claim your parents' property. So you are not a good daughter, you are not a good wife. So that's one reason. Although the government of Nepal has been highly encouraging by giving some kind of exemptions on fees if a woman is the owner, or if she's buying a land, so the amount the man has to pay for women, it's significantly low. There has been some steps on the right direction, but more than that, I think it has got to do with the patriarchy we are living in, the societal structure, and how the society is comfortable like making women dependent rather than making independence, because I think the ownership is one of the important pillars when it comes to women's empowerment.
Okay, thank you. Indu Tharu says, we know that women's labor, that is household work, is invisible, no matter how real it is. How can their labor be counted? Any one of the speakers today, would you like to share your thoughts on that? How can their labor be counted?
I can
Yes,
just
yes,
speak
please.
for a minute, maybe.
Yes.
First of all, the first thing is survey. I think that's a very important question, because how to quantify it, that's very much important. So first of all is survey. So in survey, we have started doing it already, and it's not a new thing that I'm suggesting. Conducting surveys that ask individuals about their daily activities, and we can quantify how many hours do you spend for cooking, like 2 hours, how many hours do you spend for kids. So this data can then estimate the value of work, because right now we have no idea. Although there has been some survey, we still don't know at large like how many hours are being spent, right? And the other thing is the monetary valuation, like assigning a monetary value to unpaid work. Many people have arguing on this side that assigning some kind of monetary value to unpaid work can help highlight its economic significance. But there are people who are also opposing that, like, okay, mothers are not like maids, so how can you give salary just like you are paying to your maids, for example, that's another thing. But I think it's very much important to give a monetary valuation. In Nepal and in other countries also, the advocacy has been there around including unpaid care work as the part of like GDP, or maybe it's a national income, including unpaid care work as a national income, because that will provide a comprehensive picture of a country's economic activity. So when I know my care work is also being accounted for like a total national income, I think the recognition will be more automatic. And lastly, it has to be recognized. The government needs to implement certain policies for the people who are just on unpaid care work. There should be some kind of social benefits. There should be some kind of retirement plan, right? So I think that is also very much important, like some kind of recognition in a policy.
Thank you. Prashanthi, would you like to add something?
Sure, Shobha. So I was just thinking about the early conversation on social norms. I mean, too often when we think about social norms, we think about social norms, changing a social norm of a man or a woman or a household. But I think in this case, we really need to think about institutional social norms change. And how can we, from an institutional level, policy, legal system, the way that we conceptualize our economies and how we measure and monitor our economies. We need to think about how care work, the normative change can happen about care work at that level. So it all comes down from that point. So I think it's a broader conversation to have, but I think institutional social norms change around care work and taking away this unfair gendered nature of care work and the unrecognized, unvalued, unsafe nature of care work. I think it's a lot of work to be done. We know that we have ad hoc policies about maternity, paternity leave, and we have few laws here and there, but I think we need a broader drive in terms of institutionally recognizing and changing social norms at that level about care work to make it truly visible and safe and fair. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, I'm reminded, if I'm not, I think it was way back in 1975 that in Iceland on a Friday, all women all across the country, they stopped working. They said, we will not work for one day. And perhaps the whole nation was thrown into a chaos, and many very good changes were brought, legal changes were brought about, and the law was changed to benefit women. So we do need something like that here also, I think. And we have a question for Betty from Rita, that how female politicians in Sudan are working to promote welfare of women, especially in this invisible labor world. And questions also go to other speakers from different countries. That how are the politicians dealing with it? And Betty, being a politician, would you like to answer first? Because question is directed to you, Betty.
If I understand the question right, is how are the politicians supporting or helping the women to do what?
Yeah. It says, just a moment, yes, to promote welfare of women, especially regarding invisible labor and unpaid care work.
In South Sudan, by the way, South Sudan and Sudan are two different countries.
Yes.
Yeah. So in South Sudan, we are still at a very, very basic level. So the politicians are only raising awareness that the women who are working at home and who are not being paid actually contribute much more than the man who goes to the office and get a salary at the end of the month. Because if this work is quantified, like how much does she put in for collecting water, for going to the market to buy food, cooking the food, caring for the children and for the family. If you hire somebody to do this work, even the salary of the man would not be enough. So that is just to value the work. At the moment, as I said before, that the women in South Sudan are the breadwinners, because there are the men, either they have left the rural area and come to town. Also in town, there are no employment. So the women are the breadwinners. Now, sometimes women go out to the market to sell what they sell in order to bring food, and they ask the man to stay home. When the woman comes home, the moment she enters the house, the man is running. So, oh, I had enough. This was too much for me. I cannot tolerate it. I cannot have it. So they are beginning to understand that women take a lot, and yet women don't complain. So the women politicians are raising awareness. And as we say that we should not be speaking to the converted. We should not be talking to the women only. We should be talking to the men so that they understand the pains the women are going through. And we don't want this language that my wife is not working. And yet your wife is at home doing a lot of work, which you cannot do. So we want the men to recognize that their wives are homemakers. So they should use languages that can please people, can please the women. So we are just raising awareness at the moment. And we are also telling the women that you must be able to communicate with your husband. You tell your husband, dear father of whatever child, I am tired at the moment. Can you kindly wash the child or bathe the baby? You have to have a communication. If you talk with your husband and you communicate, and he starts trying to help you, he will realize how important it is for him also to do some of the chores at home, because it brings him close to the children and also close to the family. In South Sudan, what men do not want to do is cooking. Okay. Men do not want to cook because they say the stove, the type of stove the women use is not appropriate for the men. And some men are helping, some men are now cooking. And when the men cook, the sisters of the men, instead of appreciating it, the sisters will say, oh, your wife is now enslaving you. So we have this customary problem also in the country. So first of all, women have to change their mind so that they can change the mind of the men. So we as politicians really are just raising awareness at this moment. That is very important to change the mindset, to look at things differently, to say what a man can do, a woman can do 3 times better. What a woman can do, a man can also do. You see. So if we change our mindsets, we will be able to have a better society.
Yes. Thank you, Betty. And I think, yes, awareness is important and conversation is very important. Conversation is like awareness through conversation. Because when I speak to women, they say, yes, what you're saying is right. But we never looked at it that way. We never thought, because, we are right from birth, right from early childhood, we are fed in those social norms and those perspectives, and they become part of us. So we feel, the woman feels, yes, it is her duty. There is not, means, why should I talk against it, or why should I raise my voice against those injustices which are being done? So conversation is important, I think. Thank you. Faiza, yes, sorry, Faiza has raised her hand. Faiza, please.
Hello,
Hello.
Faiza here from Pakistan.
Yes, Faiza.
I want to ask a question. What steps can be taken to ensure that individuals, regardless of gender, have ownership and control over their salaries in household and workplace? Anyone answer?
Yes. Can you repeat your question once again, Faiza?
What steps can be taken? What steps can be taken to ensure that individuals, regardless of gender, have ownership and control over their salaries?
Okay.
Because this is one of the burning issue.
All right. Yes. Any one of the speakers, please.
I will come in with an example.
Yes.
From Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka has a organized trade union called Domestic Workers Union. So they are paid care work providers. So something that they came up with, they organized themselves, and then they drafted certain policies and ways that they want to negotiate with their employers. So one of them being the kind of pay and the level of negotiation, the kind of protection, and so their terms of employment. So I think organization among care providers, paid care providers, is one way that we can tackle the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Maybe just to say a little word. I think ownership, control, the word is control.
Yes.
Control is an adjective to describe the way a certain thing is being handled. And to me, I think for any of the family members to control anything, it will bring a disadvantage in the family. Families should have trust in each other, to agree that whatever is in the home is for both of us, not for any one person. If one person starts saying that I start controlling over things, trust in the family starts breaking. So control is not a good thing in a family. People need to agree on how they want to do things. Yes, a man will always want to be the head of the family. Yes, we women respect that. But a woman also wants to be the mother of the family, and the man should respect it. So both of us are important, and both of us have to manage things in an agreed manner, on a consensus manner, but not one person controlling the other person submissive. So I think the word control is the word we need to change in our mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
But my question is different. I want to say that a female is working 24/7, but does not have ownership of her salary. I mean to say, she not supposed to spend her money according to her choice. So how we can implement it, and what steps are important to handle this issue. In family or in house, his partner is not allowing him to spend her money according to her choice.
It goes to trust. First of all, this man did not educate you. Very few men educate their wives. So this man married you when you were already educated and ready for job, or even you were already working. But you agreed to come together and share your resources. If you have a resource that you cannot utilize, you cannot use without the permission of the man, he should also pool his resource in the same pool and should not use without the permission of the woman. Otherwise, women who are working spend more of their earnings in the house than men, because a man only gives an allowance to a woman to use for a month, but the woman uses all she has. Whatever is missing in the house, she just goes and buy. She doesn't go back to the man and say, I need salt, I need soap, I need this. You see, if a man starts controlling the salary of the woman, trust in the family start breaking, because the woman inside her, she will not feel happy. This money I worked for, and yet you are controlling it. Your money, I'm not controlling it. So what we need to do is we need to raise awareness of trust so that families begin to talk among themselves, because communication is the most important thing in this way. If families communicate, nobody can say you cannot use your money, because I'm earning the money. If you say I cannot use the money, then I will stop working. I will stop going to the office to earn money. I'll just do the house so that you bring the money. But if a man leaves a woman with a free hand, that woman takes that money nowhere. The money is spent all in the house. But if a man controls it, the woman will start also hoarding money. So this is what one thing men should understand. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Betty. But I want more men in the audience to please share their thoughts and insights on what we are discussing. Meanwhile, there is a question from Sushmita that how to work with media as they influence the thoughts of the masses. However, media prefers to show stuff that sells better or sells best. So, Rita and Samiksha, would you like to add say something to that, Rita? How can the media influence?
Of course, I saw a very good relationship now between some organizations, CSO, with the media and also the government. They work together to raise the awareness of this invisible labor force and unpaid care workers as a topic in the media. So I think most serious media now in Indonesia, and I hope in other Asian countries, are starting to really raise awareness among their audience that this is the serious topic that should be addressed both by the woman itself, the government, the male, and also the media. The media plays very important role because they can spread the message, they can reach out to their wide audience. And now we have a lot of innovative media with their podcasts, with their video, and so people would understand the magnitude of this problem. And now the media see this is serious. We don't want to sell the hot issue like whatever political and other entertainment, but this is the thing that we should focus on. So I think collaborating with the media, between the International Labor Organization, with local media in Indonesia, UN Women, and also the Ministry of Women Empowerment. So they have worked together to produce stories stories of women in invisible labor workforce to share their thoughts. So
your voice is breaking.
The audience find
your voice is breaking, Rita, a little bit. So,
sorry.
Yes.
So I think now we see a lot of collaboration among media and also other organizations to raise the issue and to put this topic into their mainstream media and also in innovative media. So I think media now is getting more serious in raising the awareness of people, the government and policymakers to find solution for this problem. I think media can be good collaborators in this issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. And you are a trainer, so I hope you organize more trainings with the media on this and related issues with gender equality.
Yes. We do have some training with Indonesian Journalist Association about this issue.
Okay. So that is important. Would Samiksha like to add something to this?
Just one point that I want to highlight, that we are living in this world of media where, profit maximization has been the key thing. We have seen like the corporate media, the clickbait journalism, sensational journalism. But I want to highlight that media job is not just to make profit. They have to work towards social responsibility, and it's impossible without the news media or media at large being gender responsive. But if you are always driven by profit and the contents like clickbait, sensational journalism, we often see different jokes which are like very sexist. And I have been to the theaters where people are laughing at like sexism as it is some kind of joke. So while some of the things, as Rita pointed out, are getting better, like in terms of like alternative media and more agencies educating people, but also when you talk about this so-called mainstream media, I think there is so much of misogyny and so much of in a way reinforcing gender stereotypes at large. But I think collaborating is the key. Like, UN agencies, different kind of agencies, universities, media, we all need to collaborate together, and also need to highlight the fact that if you should not be focusing on profit. And also talking about profit, we should not forget that women are also audience. Women are also paying for the subscription. Your target audience are not only insensitive men. More and more men are also being very responsible, and they want to see the contents where women are represented in like a proper gender roles, not too much of objectification or reinforcing gender stereotypes. So I think it's important that we know that side. So it comes along with like the media literacy at the part of the audience too.
Thank you, Samiksha. And I think there is one.
And let me just say one word.
Yes, please go ahead. Please do.
You see, for us politicians, media is a very important arm of our work. But we also say media can break or make. So it depends on how you use the media. It can promote your work, but it can also destroy your work. As my sister who have just spoken, that now there are more media and their focus is earning more money. So what they would be wanting to do is just to portray what people want to hear. And what people want to hear is always the bad news. People don't want to hear the good news. But you start talking bad news, everybody will be rushing to that media. So this is not what we want the media to do, to portray women negatively. We want the media to begin to portray women positively, that it is the women who are holding the homes together. It is the women who are holding the nation together. And yet, these women are not being paid for it. So it is not about the money, but it is about the services and about the gains that people get out of it. So the media should also look at themselves like they're in the position of women who should be serving the people without gains, without being paid. So that so that the messages reach, because messages reach far and wide, easier and quicker through the media. It's not through training, not through conferences or through meetings like this, but the media can make it reach far and wide. So it is important to work with the media so that the messages are passed across. And as I said, we can only change the mindset of the people if they hear and if they know. So they can only hear and know better if we work with the media and make the media actually bring out what we want to say. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We have already exceeded our time, but it has been a very vibrant discussion and very enriching session. So my sincere thanks to each one of the presenters for finding time to share their invaluable insights, and special thanks to the audience for their participation and interjections. And before we close, let us not forget that harmful social and gender norms are sanctioned by patriarchy. Idolizing the homemaker and motherhood role of women gives a social sanction to thrusting the majority of burden of unpaid household and other care work on women. And at the same time, it gives an escape to men from child-rearing responsibilities and household chores. And it gives them undue power to hold women to account. Now is the time to care. And the only possible world order which is socially just and ecologically sustainable for everyone and for our planet is a feminist world order, which I think I mentioned earlier. And a feminist fossil fuel-free future, the 5 Fs, is the only sensible way forward. So do I believe. So goodbye and namaste till we meet again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sobaji. Thank you, everybody. Hope to
Thank
see you
you.
all soon.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.